The great chamber of the Galactic Council floated in silent orbit above a blue-white gas giant. Its walls shimmered with energy fields that carried the voices of hundreds of species. For thousands of years, this council had decided the fate of the galaxy, passing laws, ending wars, and holding peace together by fragile threads of fear and respect. But today that order was breaking. Every delegate in the room felt the same chill. Something was coming. Something even the most ancient races did not understand. Across the stars, strange signals had begun to echo through deep space. Entire colonies had gone dark. Fleets sent to investigate had never returned. The first rumors said pirates or rogue machines were responsible, but soon it became clear these disappearances followed a pattern. Someone, or something, was sweeping through the spiral arm with silent precision. The council's leaders gathered, projecting their voices into the shared air of the chamber. Some shouted, others trembled. Fear mixed with disbelief. None of them wanted to speak the word that everyone was already thinking: war. The senior archivist floated above the center dais, his form surrounded by golden light. His voice, soft but filled with age, broke through the noise. He spoke of an old record hidden deep in the archives, a record from the time when humanity first joined the galactic community. Hundreds of cycles ago, the humans of Earth had been small compared to the vast empires of the stars. They had arrived late, discovered by accident, and welcomed with polite curiosity. Most thought of them as an ambitious young race that would soon fade or submit to stronger powers. But the archives told another story. The humans had changed everything. They learned faster than any species had ever seen. They copied technologies that took others centuries to master. They built ships that could fly through storms that shredded alien fleets. And when a coalition of older races tried to suppress them, humanity fought back. Not for conquest, but survival. The war that followed had scarred entire systems. No one won, yet no one forgot what humans were capable of. They fought with an intensity that frightened even their allies. And when the war ended, humanity turned inward. They stopped expanding, stopped talking, and built defenses so powerful that no one dared to test them again. For generations since, Earth had been quiet. Its colonies stayed small and peaceful. Human ambassadors smiled, traded, and kept their secrets close. Most species had begun to think humanity had grown soft. But now, as the Council looked at the newest reports, the silence around Earth no longer felt peaceful. It felt like the stillness before a storm. The delegate from the Valari system stood up, his crystalline body glowing with agitation. "We have lost contact with 6 outer colonies," he said. "We cannot confirm what attacked them, but our last transmission showed dark shapes entering the system, massive ships of unknown origin. No life signs, no signals, only destruction." Another voice rose from the shadows. "And yet look where those systems are," said a tall, scaled representative. "Each one lies near a human trade route, near human space." The room filled with murmurs. Accusations spread like fire. Some believed humanity was secretly behind the disappearances, preparing for expansion. Others feared humans had awoken something ancient, a weapon, a species, a curse, but no one knew for sure. The high speaker called for calm. The energy field above the floor shifted to display a map of the galaxy, dotted with red lights where contact had been lost. At the center of that spreading pattern sat a single glowing sphere. Sol, the system of Earth. "The disturbances are moving toward human territory," the speaker said. "We cannot confirm if they are the cause or the target. But if this pattern continues, the next systems to fall will be theirs." The chamber fell silent. Every being in that room understood the weight of those words. If someone was attacking human space, the results would shake the entire galaxy. Because humanity was not defenseless, far from it. Rumors spoke of hidden fleets buried beneath planetary crusts, of vast shipyards orbiting the sun cloaked in light, of weapons so powerful that even the oldest civilizations had banned research on them. No one could prove these things, but every empire believed them enough to stay cautious. A representative from the Elthari Alliance whispered, "If the humans go to war again, the galaxy will burn." The speaker turned toward the center, his form flickering between light and shadow. "Then we must contact Earth. We must know their intentions before panic spreads." Envoys were dispatched instantly, swift vessels equipped with diplomatic clearance, bearing the Council's insignia. They traveled faster than most fleets could chase. But when they reached the edge of Sol system, The human defense network stopped them. No response came. No permission to approach. Only an automated warning. Foreign craft are not permitted beyond this boundary. Leave now. The envoys returned empty-handed, shaken by what they had seen. Massive constructs orbited every planet. Stations built for war, not trade. Mars glowed with energy fields. The moon's dark side carried the signature of buried reactors. Humanity had turned its home system into a fortress. Back in the council chamber, fear deepened. "They are preparing," one delegate said quietly. "But for what?" Another voice replied, trembling. "Maybe not for us. Maybe for something else." That thought lingered. It was easier to believe humanity was defending itself than plotting aggression. Yet no one could be certain. Weeks passed. Reports continued. More colonies vanished. The Council's monitoring stations recorded massive energy waves in deep space, the kind produced only by fleets on the move. Still, humanity said nothing. Their diplomats remained silent. Their trade routes closed. Even human civilians living on foreign worlds began returning home, called back by unseen orders. To the rest of the galaxy, it felt like the humans knew what was coming, and everyone else was blind. Then came the images. A small research probe on the outer edge of the Perseus arm captured something impossible. Hundreds of human warships moving in perfect formation, engines glowing like small suns. Each ship bore markings that no longer represented nations or corporations. They carried only one emblem, a blue sphere wrapped in white wings, the symbol of Earth Command. The council chamber shook with panic when the footage arrived. Some believed humanity was launching an invasion. Others thought they were moving to intercept the unknown threat. No one could tell which truth was worse. The speaker tried to keep order, but the fear was beyond control. "We need answers," shouted one representative. "We must demand that humanity explain this buildup." Another voice, sharp and cold, cut through the noise. "Demand," it said. "You cannot demand anything from a species that once fought the entire council and survived." Those words silenced the chamber. Everyone remembered the old stories. The battles fought long ago when humanity was still young but terrifyingly determined. The legends said that even when their cities burned, humans never surrendered. They fought with every ship, every life, until the stars themselves turned red. If they were preparing for war again, no power could stop them. The speaker ended the session with heavy words. "We must be careful," he said. "If we provoke them, we risk becoming part of something we cannot control." That night, across the galaxy, the stars seemed colder. Civilizations that had ruled for ages now looked toward Sol with quiet dread. Every broadcast, every military command, every prayer whispered in the dark carried the same question. What is Earth planning? And though no one could hear them, in the quiet depths of the solar system, millions of humans were already at work. Engineers built in silence, fleets aligned, and command networks activated after centuries of sleep. Humanity was not hiding anymore, they were waiting. No one yet knew the full truth. But soon the galaxy would learn that the coming storm was not about politics or conquest. It was about survival. And when survival was on the line, humanity would rise again, just as they had before, to defend their home. The Galactic Council could sense it in their bones, in the electric air that flowed through their great hall. Something ancient and unstoppable was awakening in the hearts of humans. And far across the void, Earth turned slowly beneath its sun, quiet, patient, and ready. The galaxy waited for an answer from Earth, but none came. Not a single transmission, not a single signal. The Council had sent message after message, each marked with the highest diplomatic clearance, but the silence from Sol's system was absolute. Even automated beacons that usually responded to trade signals now ignored every call. At first, some thought it was a technical problem, but soon that hope faded. It was clear, Earth was refusing to speak. The ambassadors who had once worked on human colonies returned home with confused faces and half-finished stories. They said humans had become distant and serious. The warm greetings and laughter that once filled human ports were gone. Instead, there were quiet faces, sealed stations, and military transports moving like shadows through orbit. The colonies that had once welcomed visitors now turned them away. Signs appeared on every docking bay. Terran space, closed until further notice. To the Council and the rest of the galaxy, it looked like humanity was shutting its doors. For the first time in generations, Earth stood alone. On the surface, the planet still looked peaceful. Green continents, blue oceans, and white clouds drifting gently above. But deep within its cities, something was changing. Factories that had been silent for centuries were alive again. Energy grids pulsed with power far beyond civilian levels. Across the Moon, Mars, and the asteroid belt, old structures hidden beneath dust and rock came back to life. Machines woke up, systems rebooted, and entire fleets that had slept for ages began to breathe again. Human leaders did not speak to the galaxy, but they spoke to their own. Quietly, efficiently, and with unity that shocked even themselves. Every human world received the same command: prepare. No one outside knew exactly what they were preparing for. But every child, worker, and soldier on Earth knew why. Something dangerous was coming. Something old. The Council's observation fleets kept their distance but watched every move they could. The data they gathered was unsettling. Massive shipyards surrounded the Moon, producing warships faster than any known industrial system. Energy fields wrapped around Mars like armor. Even the smallest asteroids in the belt now carried guns. To the alien observers, it felt like the humans were turning their entire solar system into a fortress. But still, they said nothing. Meetings in the Galactic Council grew longer and more tense. The more they watched humanity, the less they understood. The silence was unnerving. Normally, when a species prepared for war, they boasted, threatened, or tried to form alliances. But humanity did none of that. They didn't threaten anyone. They didn't demand territory. They simply worked, cold, focused, and united. Some called it arrogance. Others called it fear. But those who had studied human history knew better. When humans stopped talking, it meant they had made a decision. A diplomat from a nearby star system tried to make contact one last time. His ship approached Earth's outer defenses, broadcasting peaceful intentions. What answered him was not a voice, but a wall of light. Thousands of drones surrounded his vessel, their weapons ready but not firing. A message appeared on his screen, simple and final. Unauthorized entry into Terran space will not be tolerated. Leave immediately. He left without protest. Back in the Council, his report shook everyone. They didn't even explain, he said. They didn't argue or threaten. They just warned once, and that was enough. The Council realized something terrifying. This wasn't the same humanity they remembered centuries ago. The old human governments that argued among themselves were gone. The nations that once competed now acted as one. They had become something else, unified, disciplined, and silent. The High Speaker tried to calm the panic. He told the chamber that maybe Earth was only defending itself. Maybe they had detected the same unknown force that had been destroying colonies near the edge of the galaxy. That idea made some sense, and for a short time it brought a little peace. But deep down, everyone knew the truth. When humans prepared for something, it was never small. The evidence grew day by day. Council scouts detected strange warp signatures beyond Pluto. Something large was being tested. Engines so powerful they distorted local spacetime. Another report spoke of human fleets gathering near Jupiter's moons. And then came the most frightening news. The humans were no longer using standard galactic communication frequencies. They had switched to a private, encrypted network that no one could decode. The Council tried to listen, but every attempt failed. It was as if humanity had vanished behind a wall of silence and steel. Meanwhile, ordinary people across the galaxy began to panic. Markets fell. Border colonies evacuated. Traders refused to approach human systems. The words Terran Alert began to appear on star charts in red, but on Earth the people were calm. They worked quietly side by side, focused on a single purpose. Children learned emergency drills in schools. Families packed supplies and moved into secure shelters. The skies filled with ships, and not for escape but for readiness. Humanity was not running. It was waiting. There was no public announcement, no speeches filled with emotion. Only a quiet understanding shared by billions. They had faced extinction before, and they had survived. They would do it again. Across the great oceans, the last of Earth's ancient war monuments were uncovered and restored. Not as weapons, but as reminders that survival had always come from unity. The old human wars, once seen as shameful history, now stood as lessons. The people looked back and realized something simple. They had always fought hardest when they had no choice. In the quiet of night, the planet's defense systems lit up one by one. Satellites rose, drones launched, and massive ships began to drift out of dry dock. No one celebrated. No one cheered. They just watched in silence as humanity prepared to meet whatever waited beyond the stars. In space, the first of the great ships came online. Its hull gleamed black against the sun, absorbing light like a shadow. Its size dwarfed anything the Council had ever built. The name on its side read only one word: Vigil. It was not built to conquer. It was built to protect. One by one others followed, hundreds, then thousands. Every one of them carried the same symbol, the blue earth surrounded by white wings, the symbol of unity, not of empire. From their stations, human officers looked out across the void, knowing the galaxy was watching, but they didn't care. They weren't building for fear. They were building for survival. Far away, the Council watched the massive fleet form and felt helpless. They had spent centuries pretending they were the ones who kept the galaxy safe. Now, as they saw Earth's silent might, they realized how fragile that belief had been. The speaker whispered in private meetings, "If they go to war, none of us can stop them." Yet still, the Council did nothing. They feared that any move, even a friendly one, might be seen as a threat. They had ruled through fear and power for so long, but now they faced a species that neither feared nor sought power. Humanity only cared about protecting its own, and that made them unpredictable. Weeks turned into months. The silence from Earth continued. But the movement didn't stop. Deep space sensors recorded more signs of human fleets leaving Sol system, but no one knew where they went. It was as if they had vanished into the darkness. Some believed humanity had finally gone mad, preparing for a war that didn't exist. Others thought they knew something no one else did. And then, without warning, the strange disappearances across the galaxy grew worse. Systems once filled with life went dark in hours. No distress calls, no battles, no debris, only silence. When the Council reviewed the data, they noticed something horrifying. The path of destruction was heading straight toward human space. That was when everything changed. The Council realized that humanity's silence had not been pride. It was preparation. They had seen the danger long before anyone else and had stayed quiet, not out of fear, but out of focus. Now, the galaxy understood what that meant. As reports came in faster and faster, the Council's leaders met again, their voices trembling. "If the enemy reaches Earth," one said, "the entire galaxy will burn." Another voice answered, soft but clear, "Or it will be saved, because humanity will not fall quietly." Outside, in the dark of space, a small human probe moved past the edge of Sol system. It sent one final signal to Earth, then turned its lens outward, toward the stars where the darkness was coming from. On the screen, faint shapes began to appear. Enormous, cold, and moving fast, humanity's silence was about to end. For months, the Galactic Council had searched for an answer. They had watched Earth's silence. They had seen the fleets forming, and still they could not understand why humanity was preparing for war. Then one day the answer came. Not from human space, but from the dark edges of the galaxy. A patrol ship from the Council detected strange signals near the dead systems on the outer rim. The transmissions were faint, broken, and carried no known language. At first the crew thought it was just interference, but the pattern was too organized. Someone, or something, was sending a message. When the Council's scientists decoded fragments of it, they froze. The signals contained data from long ago, from a war that predated most living civilizations. It was a warning written in ancient binary code. The message repeated one word over and over again: return. At first, no one understood what it meant. But as more probes were sent into that dark region, they began to pick up shapes, enormous moving masses that reflected no light and emitted no life signs. When they finally sent drones close enough to record visuals, the galaxy changed forever. The images showed colossal ships, dark, sharp, and silent. Their hulls looked older than time, covered with strange runes that pulsed faintly. The Council analysts called them the Visha, a name found in the oldest archives of the galaxy. No one wanted to believe it. The Visha were a myth, a story told by historians about the species that once tried to erase humanity during their first interstellar age. Centuries ago, before the Council ever acknowledged Earth, the Visha had appeared near the Milky Way's edge. They were said to be the destroyers of civilizations, a cold, ancient race that saw younger species as infections to be removed. According to the oldest Terran records, the Visha were the first to declare war on early human explorers. Back then, humanity had barely begun to travel beyond their solar system. Yet somehow they survived. No one knew how. The Visha vanished after that, and many believed they had been wiped out, or simply gone into hiding. Now they had returned. The Council realized with dread that humanity had known it long before anyone else. Their silence, their preparation, it all made sense now. They weren't preparing to attack the galaxy. They were preparing to defend it. Inside the Great Council chamber, chaos erupted. Voices clashed, demands echoed, and panic grew. Every race wanted answers. How did they return? One shouted. Why didn't humanity tell us? Cried another. The High Speaker finally called for calm. Because they didn't trust us, he said quietly. They remember the past. When they were young and weak, we looked away as they fought alone. They remember who stood by them and who didn't. The truth hurt everyone in the room. Back when humanity was fighting for survival, the Council had done nothing. They had considered Earth too small, too violent, too unpredictable to save. The humans had fought the Visha alone and somehow survived. Now history was repeating itself. In the days that followed, more reports came in. The Visha were moving fast. Whole star systems went silent within hours. No distress calls, no resistance, only emptiness. The destruction was surgical, as if the Visha were cleansing the stars of life itself. Some council members wanted to flee, to abandon their outer colonies and protect only their homeworlds. Others argued that humanity should be confronted before they dragged everyone into another war. But a few voices whispered something else. Maybe, just maybe, Earth was the only hope they had left. For the first time in centuries, the mighty Galactic Council felt powerless. Meanwhile, in Sol System, humanity continued its quiet work. They didn't respond to the Council's messages, but their actions spoke clearly. Across every human colony, banners bearing the old Earth insignia were raised again. The symbol of unity, the blue sphere with white wings, spread like wildfire. Factories ran nonstop, churning out ships, drones, and weapons. Massive carriers drifted from orbit around Mars, their hulls gleaming in the sunlight. The world's population had stopped panicking. There was fear, yes, but also purpose. Every person knew they were part of something greater, the defense of their species and maybe of the entire galaxy. On Earth, the nights glowed brighter as thousands of orbital defense platforms activated. The skies above were filled with the trails of departing ships. The people didn't celebrate. They only watched quietly, whispering goodbyes, proud and afraid all at once. Far beyond, in the cold darkness, the Visha fleets continued to move. They destroyed everything in their path, even worlds that tried to surrender. No one escaped them. They didn't communicate, didn't demand, didn't show emotion. They were a force of extinction. The Council sent small fleets to engage them, hoping to slow their advance. None returned. When the Council received the recordings from one of the last battles, everyone fell silent. The footage showed thousands of Visha ships moving as one, firing weapons that shredded entire fleets in seconds. It wasn't a battle. It was an execution. That was when the Council realized what humanity had already known. The galaxy was not ready for this kind of enemy. In desperation, the Council met again, debating whether to reach out to Earth once more. Some feared the humans would ignore them. Others feared they might not. What if the humans were angry? What if they blamed the Council for not believing them sooner? But before they could decide, a transmission arrived, not from Earth but from one of their own scout ships. The message was short and shaky, filled with static. "We found them," the pilot said. "We found the humans." The Council chamber held its breath as the transmission continued. "They're not hiding," the pilot said. "They're waiting. Their fleets, they're already beyond their borders. Thousands of ships. They're not building anymore, and they're ready." The feed cut out. The Council realized that humanity was already on the move. Across the galaxy, the silence of Earth ended with a single broadcast that reached every known civilization. A calm voice spoke in every language, emotionless but powerful. "This is Earth Command. The enemy has returned. The Visha rise once more. We will engage. Do not interfere. Stay clear of our path." Then the signal vanished and the galaxy fell quiet again. That single message sent waves of fear through every system. Humanity wasn't asking for help. They weren't forming alliances. They were giving a warning. To most species, that silence was terrifying. But to those who had studied human history, it was something far more powerful, a promise. Because when humans said they would fight, they meant it. The council gathered one last time that cycle. The High Speaker looked over the sea of delegates and spoke the truth that everyone had been avoiding. We cannot stop them. We can only hope they win. Across the stars, the human fleets were already moving. The war engines that had slept for generations were alive again. Thousands of ships aligned in perfect formation, surrounding carriers larger than cities. Energy fields shimmered like oceans of light. In every command room, human officers watched the data scroll across their screens. The enemy was coming, the same ancient darkness that had once tried to erase them. And this time, they would not wait to be attacked. The order went out quietly, but it echoed across the void. Launch all fleets. The first wave of human warships left Sol system, engines roaring like thunder. Behind them, Earth watched in silence. On every alien world, people looked to the sky, knowing that history was changing again. The Council's fear turned into awe. For so long they had doubted humanity, mocked their stubbornness and emotion. But now, as they watched the human fleets vanish into the stars, they saw something no machine or empire could ever understand: the power of human will. And somewhere deep in the galaxy, the Visha continued their advance, silent, unstoppable, merciless. But for the first time in millennia, they were not the hunters anymore. The humans were coming. The galaxy had fallen into silence after humanity's broadcast. Every station, every ship, and every world that received the message felt the same thing: fear mixed with awe. No threats. No promises. Just one message: do not interfere. Stay clear of our path. To the Council, those words sounded like the voice of judgment itself. For weeks, no one heard another sound from Earth. The humans vanished beyond their borders, and the great void between stars grew heavy with waiting. The Council had no way of knowing what was happening out there. Their probes disappeared without a trace, and their fleets refused to enter Terran space. But deep inside, every Council member knew the humans were already fighting. The war with the Visha had begun. And then, unexpectedly, the humans spoke again. It wasn't a call for help, nor a message of victory. It was a request, short, cold, and clear. Galactic Council, send no fleets to Sol, remain neutral. We will not attack unless attacked. This is Earth's war. The Council gathered in full assembly that same day. The entire chamber was filled with nervous voices. Some said humanity had gone mad. Others believed they were the galaxy's last chance. The High Speaker, who had seen more wars than most, stood and looked across the crowded hall. They are not asking for permission, he said slowly. They are telling us to stay out of their way. No one argued. The Council decided to send envoys anyway, not soldiers, not spies, just peaceful ships carrying messages of concern and requests for understanding. They wanted to know if there was still room for peace. When the first envoy arrived near Earth, it was met by a wall of silence. A vast barrier of drones floated across the outer rim of Sol system, each one armed and awake. They didn't attack, but they didn't move either. When the envoy tried to hail them, the only reply came from a beacon that activated nearby. The beacon's transmission repeated one line again and again, in a calm, human voice. Foreign presence not authorized. Please return to your origin. This is your only warning. The envoy obeyed. Back in the Council chamber, the message replayed again and again, the same quiet tone echoing through the room. No shouting, no anger, and only warning. That frightened everyone more than any threat could have. It meant humanity wasn't emotional. They weren't desperate. They were in control. The Council's fear turned into something deeper: respect. Days turned into weeks. The Council's monitoring stations picked up strange energy readings far from the galactic center. Entire sectors flickered with massive energy bursts, then went dark. Something enormous was happening out there. Something that sensors could barely understand, and then, one night, the stars near the Perseus arm changed. Massive human fleets appeared out of folded space, their arrival shaking nearby systems. Thousands of ships, carriers, cruisers, and dreadnoughts moved like a single mind. Their engines glowed blue and white, leaving trails that looked like ribbons of light across the void. The Council's observers watched in disbelief. No species had ever commanded fleets of this scale, but what truly stunned them wasn't the size, it was the silence. The humans didn't transmit any noise, no music, no chatter, no war cry. They moved as if every pilot and ship shared the same thought. When the alien observers zoomed in on one of the larger ships, they saw words painted across its hull. Not a name, but a statement. For every world that fell, it was a message to the Visha. The Visha fleets appeared soon after, dark and countless. They came from the void like a living storm, their ships shaped like jagged blades, their weapons burning cold blue light. The battle that followed was beyond anything the galaxy had seen, but the Council didn't see all of it. Only fragments. Their deep space telescopes captured distant flashes, explosions that swallowed moons and waves of light that rippled across the void. When the light faded, there was only silence again. For 3 whole days, no signals came from that region of space. Then on the 4th day, a single human transmission broke through the static. It wasn't directed at the Council, but the Council heard it anyway. Target neutralized. Sector cleared. Continue operation. Simple, cold, efficient. The Council realized that humanity was not only fighting, they were winning. In the weeks that followed, more reports came in. Human fleets had pushed deeper into enemy territory, chasing the Visha across systems that no one had dared to explore. Planets that had fallen silent began to light up again, their skies filled with human ships rescuing survivors. But humanity never asked for help, never asked for thanks. They simply did what needed to be done, and still the Council couldn't understand one thing. How were humans fighting a force that had destroyed so many worlds without losing themselves? To find out, they sent one last envoy, a desperate attempt to make contact, not for politics but for truth. This time, the humans allowed it. When the envoy reached the edge of human space, they were greeted not by drones but by a single ship. It was huge, larger than any known vessel, its surface marked with burns and scars from countless battles. The envoy expected an armed escort or a cold machine to respond. Instead, a single human face appeared on their screen, calm, tired, and resolute. "You want to know what's happening?" the human said quietly. "We're fighting them before they reach you." The alien delegate hesitated. "The Council wishes to help if you'll allow it." The human shook their head. "You can't help, not yet. This war began long before your Council was born. We'll end it this time." The envoy asked one final question. "Why didn't you warn us earlier?" For a moment, the human looked away. Then they said, "Because you wouldn't have believed us." The transmission ended there. When the envoy returned, their report was shared in silence. Every word carried the weight of something far greater than war. It carried the truth that humanity wasn't fighting for pride or revenge. They were fighting because no one else could. The Council realized that, and for the first time in history, they prayed for Earth's victory. Days turned into months. The humans pushed deeper into the dark. The Visha's attack slowed. Systems that had once been silent began to hum again with new life. And then one morning, something extraordinary happened. A message arrived not from the Council, not from a human ship, but from a neutral beacon placed in the center of the galaxy. It carried a transmission that spread across every world. The message showed a human fleet standing before the broken remains of a Visha armada. The background burned with collapsing stars. A human voice spoke softly, tired but calm. "The threat is contained. The enemy will not reach your borders. Do not approach the war zone. Earth Command will maintain quarantine." Then the signal cut off. The Council stared at the projection in disbelief. The war that had terrified the galaxy was being fought, and possibly won, by one species. But as the transmission ended, the delegates noticed something else. The tone of the human voice. It carried not victory but sadness, as if the cost of survival was too heavy to speak aloud. That night, the speaker met with the Council privately. "We must contact them again," he said. "Not to interfere, but to thank them." No one disagreed. A new envoy was prepared, one that would carry only a single message from the entire galaxy. A message of gratitude. When the envoy reached Earth's border, the defense system scanned it but did not attack. A simple light flashed green, allowing it to approach. For the first time in months, a human voice replied to a foreign call. The envoy delivered the message. "The galaxy thanks you." There was a long pause before the human answered. "Don't thank us," the voice said softly. "We didn't do it for you. We did it for home." The line cut and the transmission ended. Back in the council hall, silence filled the chamber once more. No one spoke for a long time. Then the speaker finally said, "Perhaps that's what makes them different." And out in the dark between stars, the human fleets continued to move, quiet, unstoppable, carrying the weight of an entire galaxy that once doubted them. The council now watched in awe, realizing the truth they had ignored for centuries. Earth did not seek power, only peace. But when peace was threatened, humanity would become something far beyond fear. They were not fighting for dominance. They were fighting for survival, for every life, for every memory, for every home that still looked up at the stars. And as the council watched the blue light of Earth shine across the void, they understood that the humans had given their answer, not through words but through action. The war had spread far beyond what anyone had imagined. Whole sectors that once glowed with the light of cities were now dim, filled with drifting debris and echoes of lost signals. Every observer in the galaxy watched in silence, afraid to breathe too loudly, as humanity continued to fight deep in the unknown. But the more they fought, the more the rest of the galaxy began to realize something terrifying. The balance of power was shifting. The humans were not only holding their ground, they were advancing. Their fleets moved like storms, cutting through enemy formations with sharp precision. Even the Visha, known for their endless numbers and cruel strategy, began to fall back. It was as if the universe itself had awakened something it could no longer control. For the Galactic Council, this victory did not bring relief. It brought fear. At first, they celebrated quietly. Messages of respect were whispered through their networks. Some worlds even held silent vigils, honoring the courage of the human fleets. But as time passed, that admiration began to change into unease. Because if humanity could defeat the Visha, the oldest and most feared force in known history, what could possibly stop them after that? One by one, the council members began to ask the same question in private meetings. What happens when they win? That question echoed through the great chambers of the council building, bouncing off polished metal walls and empty seats. No one could answer it. The speaker, who had watched the war from the beginning, sat quietly at the center of the room. His voice was low when he finally spoke. "If the humans survive this, they will not be the same. No one who carries the fire of such a war ever stays unchanged." The others looked at him with unease. "Are you saying they'll turn on us?" one asked. The speaker hesitated. "I'm saying they might not need us anymore." Those words spread faster than any signal. Fear began to grow where respect once lived. Some members of the council proposed to send fleets toward the human borders, not to attack, but to observe. Others disagreed, warning that even the smallest move might be seen as a threat. The debates went on for days without rest. No one slept. No one ate much. The war outside raged on, but inside the council, a different kind of battle was unfolding. A battle of fear, pride, and desperation. Then one morning, everything changed. The humans sent out another transmission. It wasn't directed to anyone specific, but every listening station in the galaxy picked it up. The message was brief. The Visha are collapsing. Their command structure is gone. The war will end soon. Those words should have brought peace, but they didn't. The council members looked at one another in disbelief. The war will end soon. What would that mean for the rest of them? Would humanity simply return home quietly? Or would they keep going, to make sure no one else could ever threaten them again? The speaker ordered an emergency meeting. Every major species, every leader, every voice of power came together. The chamber felt colder than ever before. "We must act," one representative said. "If humanity finishes the Visha and continues to expand, none of us can stop them. We must prepare." "Prepare for what?" another shouted. "You want to fight them now? After they saved us?" "They didn't save us," someone else cried. "They saved themselves, and we just happened to benefit." The noise grew louder until the speaker finally raised his hand. The room fell silent. "No," he said softly. "We will not prepare for war. We will prepare to beg." Everyone turned toward him, stunned. "Beg?" "Yes," he said. "Because if we try to fight them, we will lose. But if we show them we want peace, if we show them that we understand their sacrifice, maybe they will spare us when this war ends." The hall went quiet. No one liked the idea of begging. The council had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years, but deep inside they knew he was right, and so, for the first time in history, the council drafted a message not of command or diplomacy, but of plea. The speaker himself wrote it word by word, his hands trembling as he chose each sentence carefully. When it was finished, the message was simple and direct. "To the people of Earth, the Galactic Council speaks with humility. You have faced the storm that none of us could endure. You have carried the burden of a war that would have ended all life. We ask not for alliance nor favor, but for mercy. Spare the rest of us from the fire that follows your victory." The message was sealed and sent through every known communication channel toward Sol. Then the waiting began. Days passed, then weeks. No reply came. The council grew restless. Some thought the humans ignored them. Others believed the message never reached Earth. But deep down, everyone feared the same possibility, that humanity had heard them and simply chose to stay silent. Outside their borders, reports continued to come in. The Visha were retreating everywhere. Their fleets were shattered, their command worlds burned. And wherever the humans passed, they left behind quiet. No occupation, no conquest. Only silence. That silence was more terrifying than destruction. Finally, after 30 standard days, a signal arrived. It was faint, almost whisper-like. The council held its breath as the message began to play. A human voice spoke. Calm, heavy, but not angry. "We received your message. You have nothing to fear from us. The war is ending. We will return home soon." The words washed over the chamber like a wave of relief. Some delegates even began to cry. But then the voice continued. "Do not mistake mercy for weakness. We remember who watched in silence while our worlds burned. We remember who traded with the enemy when our colonies fell. We will not seek revenge, but we will not forget." And then the signal ended. No one spoke for several minutes. The speaker's eyes were fixed on the empty air where the hologram had been. The humans had answered, not with threats, but with truth. They weren't vengeful. They weren't greedy. But they also weren't forgiving. The council realized then that the galaxy had changed forever. After the meeting ended, the speaker stood alone in the Great Hall. The light from the nearby star filtered through the tall windows, reflecting off his weary face. He whispered to himself, "We begged them to spare us." And they did. But what have we become? Outside, millions of worlds were already beginning to shift their focus toward Earth. Trade routes changed direction. Political alliances started to crumble. Every species wanted to understand what kind of people could fight the most terrifying enemy in the galaxy and still choose restraint. Some called them heroes, others called them monsters. But deep down, every being who looked to the stars now saw something different. Not just fear, but respect. The humans had proven that courage didn't come from power. It came from the will to protect what you love, no matter the cost. As the council's ships orbited their quiet worlds, they looked toward the distant blue light of Earth and realized that the galaxy's age of arrogance was over. A new age had begun. One built not on empires, but on the memory of one planet that refused to kneel. The speaker called for one final address to be sent, not as leaders, but as equals. This time there was no fear in their message, only sincerity. "To the people of Earth, may peace find you when this war is done. We have learned much from your courage. You reminded us what it means to fight for home. If ever you need a friend, the council will answer." When the message reached Earth, there was no reply, only silence. But that silence carried meaning, not rejection, not distance, but understanding. The humans didn't need to answer. The council had already heard enough. They had begged for mercy and were spared. They had witnessed power and learned humility. And for the first time in countless ages, the Galactic Council truly understood what it meant to be small in the face of greatness. Yet, strangely, that realization didn't bring shame. It brought peace. Because sometimes the greatest act of strength is not in ruling others, but in knowing when to bow with grace. And out beyond the stars, humanity continued its long journey home, quiet, unbroken, carrying the scars of war and the hopes of an entire galaxy that had finally learned to respect the world it once ignored. The stars were quiet again. The thunder of war had faded, leaving behind a strange stillness that spread across the galaxy. Systems that once burned with conflict now drifted in silence. The great fleets of humanity, once feared by all, began their slow journey back toward home. No one knew how many of them remained. No one dared to ask, but across every star system in every colony and station the same rumor spread. Humanity had done it. The Visha were gone. The ancient terror that had haunted the galaxy for ages had finally been erased. And the galaxy, once proud and divided, now looked toward one single world, Earth. It was said that when the first of the human fleets appeared on long-range scanners, even the coldest commander stopped to watch. Those ships moved like shadows across the stars, silent, powerful, and wounded. Their hulls were covered with scars from countless battles. Some ships were missing whole sections, held together only by emergency fields, but they still flew. That was the part that shook everyone. Even broken, they refused to stop. The Galactic Council sent messages of gratitude. Entire species offered their resources to rebuild what had been lost. But Earth remained quiet. No transmissions. No replies. Only the faint blue signal of home pulsing softly in the dark. Many wondered what kind of world could produce people like that. People who fought the greatest threat in history and came back without asking for praise. When the human fleets finally crossed the border of Sol, they were greeted not with celebration but with silence. Earth's skies filled with the soft glow of returning ships. No fireworks, no loud voices, just quiet relief. The oceans reflected the light of the ships as they entered orbit. People stood on rooftops and beaches looking up at the sky. Some cried. Some smiled. Most just stared, trying to believe that it was over. The war that began among the stars had changed everything. In the great halls of the Galactic Council, the speaker watched the final transmissions from Earth's border. "They're home," he whispered. For the first time in many cycles, his voice carried hope. But others in the chamber looked uncertain. "Do you think they'll forgive us?" One asked quietly. The speaker shook his head. "Forgiveness is not what they seek. They just want peace." And he was right. Back on Earth, people were rebuilding, but not just their cities. Their hearts. The war had taken too much. It had burned deep scars into their souls. Yet through all of it, they held on to something that no enemy could destroy: their humanity. In every city, lights slowly came back on. Children who had never seen the stars without fear looked up for the first time and smiled. Families reunited. Old flags were folded and stored away, replaced by quiet gardens and rebuilt homes. There were no victory parades, no medals. The world didn't need them. Because for the people of Earth, survival itself was the victory. Across the galaxy, other civilizations watched closely. They expected Earth to rise as a new empire, to claim power, to demand tribute. But nothing like that happened. Humanity didn't send armies to other worlds. They didn't threaten anyone. Instead, they began sending out small signals, not commands, but invitations. Simple messages saying, "We're open to talk. Let's rebuild together." Those words reached the Council and every major world. It was a quiet surprise, a reminder that Earth didn't want to rule the galaxy. They wanted to heal it. Soon, small teams of human engineers began arriving on distant worlds to help restore what had been destroyed by the war. They shared technology, food, and knowledge freely. No conditions. No politics. Some worlds were so stunned they didn't believe it at first. But when they saw human ships land and workers step out with tools instead of weapons, they understood humanity wasn't just strong. They were kind. Even the speaker, who had feared them for so long, finally stood before the council one last time and spoke with a calm voice. "The humans didn't destroy us," he said. "They saved us, not because we deserved it, but because that's who they are." The chamber fell silent. Outside, life began to grow again. Worlds once blackened by fire started to bloom. Trade routes reopened. Communication lines reconnected. The galaxy was learning how to breathe again. But even as hope returned, there was still something different in the air. A deep respect, almost reverence. Whenever people spoke of Earth, children in faraway colonies learned about the war in quiet classrooms. Teachers would show them images of the human fleets and tell them they fought for their home, and in doing so, they saved ours too. The galaxy, once filled with pride and arrogance, now carried a sense of humility. And on Earth, humanity continued to grow stronger, but not in weapons, in spirit. They focused on rebuilding their oceans, cleaning their skies, restoring the lands that had suffered. They built new stations in orbit, not for war, but for exploration. They sent ships not to conquer, but to understand. For the first time in recorded history, humanity wasn't preparing for battle. They were preparing for peace, and the galaxy noticed. 1 year after the war ended, the Galactic Council sent a final invitation, an open call for all civilizations to gather on neutral ground to sign the Treaty of Renewal, an agreement to ensure that no war like this would ever happen again. Many wondered if the humans would come. Some feared they wouldn't. But on the day of the signing, as the Great Hall filled with delegates from 1,000 worlds, a door opened quietly. A group of humans entered, not in armor, but in simple dark suits. Their presence silenced the entire room. The speaker stood and bowed slightly. It was the first time in council history that such a gesture had ever been made to another species. One of the humans spoke, calm and firm. "We didn't come here to rule or to lead. We came here to make sure this never happens again." The treaty was signed, and when it was done, every world applauded, not in noise and pride, but in quiet unity. That moment became known as the renewal. It marked the beginning of a new era, not the age of Earth, as some called it, but the age of understanding, because humanity, through all their pain, had shown everyone what it meant to fight not for power, but for life itself. In the years that followed, stories of Earth spread far beyond the Council's reach. Travelers spoke of how the blue planet had become a symbol of resilience. Monuments were built on distant moons, not statues of generals or kings, but of an open hand, carved from stone, reaching toward the stars. That hand became the symbol of peace across the galaxy. And when people asked what it meant, they were told a simple answer. It means there was once a world that could destroy everything, but chose not to. The speaker grew old, but he often spent his last days watching Earth's transmissions, images of oceans, forests and cities filled with light. He once said to his students, "We begged them to spare us, they did. But in truth, they gave us more. They taught us to hope again." Back on Earth, life continued. Children played under blue skies. Ships left orbit quietly, carrying explorers to new stars. Humanity didn't stop looking outward. They just learned to do it differently. They had seen the cost of fear, the danger of arrogance, and the emptiness of power. And so, they built something new, a galaxy where cooperation mattered more than conquest. The last scene the Council ever received from Earth was a simple transmission. It wasn't a speech or a declaration, just a view from space showing the planet slowly turning in sunlight. A voice spoke softly over the image. "War taught us what we could destroy. Peace reminds us what we can build." Then the signal faded, and the galaxy continued to turn, brighter, calmer, and wiser. And though centuries would pass, the story of that one fearful council, the one that once begged Earth for mercy, would never be forgotten. Because that story became a legend, whispered from one generation to the next. There was a time when the galaxy trembled, but when the storm cleared, it was the humans who showed us the way. And with that, peace finally settled over the stars, fragile, beautiful, and real.